It's not really a surprise. I think we all kind of felt this was coming eventually, but it has happened. XDefiant is sunsetting. As you can see, as a result, new downloads, player registrations, purchases no longer available. It's going away. And there's a lot of people that are very, very frustrated by this. It's just another chapter in the book of Ubisoft kind of blowing it with things that had potential. And, you know, as is reported here by Tom Henderson on Insider Gaming, the internal memo that he sent out to Ubisoft employees reads as follows. I've not read this yet, so we're about to experience it together. Hello, everyone. I won't do the whole thing in the accent, don't worry. Okay, it has been some time since I last spoke to you, and I apologize for the silence, especially as the past months have been challenging and unsettling for Ubisoft and likely for each of you. The announcement by Marie-Sophie regarding the discontinuation of XDefiant, the closure of the San Francisco and Osaka studios, and the ramp down of Sydney production site is among the difficult decisions we've had to make. Yeah, to be clear, the shutdown of XDefiant will also lead to the shutdown of the Osaka studio of San Francisco, Ubisoft San Francisco. And all told, about 180 to 200 people will be losing their jobs as a result, which is about 1% of the workforce of Ubisoft, because they have 20,000 employees. So roughly 20,000. So it's a single point reduction in staff. He says, I want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the tremendous work done by the XDefiant teams. Their goal was to challenge the best shooter on the market, but despite the intensity of their efforts, it was not enough. I mean, this again is like something that's been alluded to by a lot of people that have been laid off in the face of this. Taking on Call of Duty is kind of difficult and it takes a little bit of time to build up to that. Like, you're not going to launch something and then kill Call of Duty or compete with Call of Duty within a 6-month period or a year period. It's going to take probably a decade of slow and steady work to even approach being competitive. And even then, just a couple of missteps can screw you over. Like, look at what's happened with Battlefield. You know, they have a couple big missteps, and where have they been? Like, they have no relevance in the market as of today compared to the ridiculous numbers that Call of Duty is doing. So you can't just put something out and be like, oh, it's not doing as much as we were hoping, so we're going to shut it down. Like, you got to stick with it for years and years and years to build it up. But what's become clear is that Ubisoft either doesn't have the money to do that and be patient like that. They are not convinced it will ever be that successful, even if given that time, or they just don't want to bother trying because they think they have other things that are more profitable that they can pursue. And whatever the cause is, they've decided that it's not enough and that it's not going to find success no matter what they do. To everyone leaving Ubisoft, I want to express my deepest gratitude for the work you have accomplished and the contributions you have made. We will do everything possible to provide you with the best support during this transition phase. You mean firing? I think that's what you mean. We wanted to take a firm and clear decision to enable us to concentrate our investments and forces on more profitable projects. I mean, there you go. Without a doubt, XDefiant was losing money, keeping servers, live service stuff with content. That's very, very expensive. And it doesn't seem like XDefiant had anywhere near enough players and not enough paying players to justify its existence as it currently was. If they wanted to treat it as a long-term investment to build up a community to maybe eventually take on Call of Duty more directly, they could have done that, but it would have meant losing money in the long term or near term for long-term benefit. And they just weren't willing to do that, it seems. I am well aware that given the current context, such announcements may worry you, and that's understandable. The entire industry is facing similar difficult decisions, yet often the scale of the impact is much larger. Our organization has allowed us to limit the impact of these kinds of decisions and make more targeted restructurings, and all our efforts are focused on trying to maintain this course and philosophy. We will continue working on evolving our organization to adapt it to market changes and with a long-term perspective in mind. Over the last few weeks, I've had the chance to read the results of Ubisoft's XP 2024 survey. The vast majority of you participated. The response rate was over 86%. I think that that's just their internal surveys they do. But he says, and you've shared questions and concerns about the future of Ubisoft via more than 55,000 comments. They have like 20,000 employees. So with 86%, like each of them are leaving an average of what, 3-4 comments? Like, Jesus. That tells you employees have thoughts. They have some strong thoughts. He goes on, I would like to sincerely thank you for your commitment, the quality of your feedback, and your collective intelligence. It's very impressive. We are compelled to take your critiques to heart, live up to your expectations, and be accountable to you and your needs. I mean, if you were being accountable, like just being real, Mr. Eve, you would have been fired a long time ago. Hate to be that guy. Just saying. When you waste billions of dollars, normally you don't get to keep your job unless your name is Eve. And a lot of this, like, again, the thing people have to remember is that Ubisoft is viewed by these guys as a family company. So a lot of the upper echelons of Ubisoft are members or friends of the Guillemot family. And that's why it's not as easy as just fire Eve, like by the board of directors, partly because I think he owns 13% of the company. That's owned by a holding firm, and then Tencent owns 49% of that holding firm that owns the 13% that they own. So all of that to say, he has 13% control over the company and has a lot of sway within the broader company, with the board of directors and everybody, because a lot of them are friends and family. And so he's not going to be pushed out. He's going to be there pretty much forever. And that's why it's not as simple as like just fire him, because if the company is a pyramid, normally like a bad CEO is just at the top. You cut off the top and boom, you put another one in place right over there and everything's happy and you just try something new. The problem with Ubisoft is that it's like at the top and there's members of the family within this area, and then there's other members of the family that go down even lower, and then there's other members of the family that are over here, and then there's other friends and family over there. So to get rid of Eve and just replace him with a new guy doesn't actually solve the problem, which is that there seem to be a lot of people in upper management that frankly shouldn't be there, but they're there because they are friends and family. And maybe some of them are very capable, but a lot of them also are probably there because they're just in the right family. So it's why I've said, like, people are like, oh, well, just fire Eve and then the company gets better. I'm not so sure. Like, yeah, it's about the family. You got to get rid of everybody, I think. It's why it's not as simple as just getting rid of the top brick. Like, it's going to require some much more significant restructurings, to use a term from them. But to be clear, there's been no accountability. I mean, if there were accountability, executives would have been fired a long time ago. Instead, projects like an NFT game with, no joke, $290 something million microtransactions. Granted, they're being sold by other players, but still, they're transactions you can make in the NFT game they launched. You're launching those games, but then you're shutting down XDefiant. You are reorganizing the team behind Prince of Persia. Like, you're doing all this. The developers, the talented devs, are suffering while you're still sitting in your office, rocking and rolling without any problems. You know, it's a little silly. He says, I want you to know that all my energy is focused on finding the means to guide Ubisoft through these turbulent times. I am working tirelessly with my team to identify the best solution so we can maintain control of our destiny. This implies that if they do not identify a new solution, they will not be in control of their destiny, which suggests to me like that sounds like just a free fall, or like a ship sinking or drifting to sea. That's what that sounds like to me. So there's that. This company, the incredible gem we've built together over the last 38 years, means everything to me. It's part of who I am. It's in my core. I'm doing everything I can to help us regain momentum so that we can continue to make Ubisoft a key player in our industry, a creator known for its unique and exceptional video games. In the coming days, some members of the executive committee will reach out to you. Cecile Roussel, maybe. We'll share new initiatives aimed at addressing some of the questions raised by Ubisoft XP. Marie-Sophie de Wilbert will present initiatives to bring back a daily focus on creation, ensuring fewer unnecessary processes and more time to dedicate to what truly matters to each of us, making the best games possible. Alain Creux will provide updates on the launch of AC Shadows, progress made in strengthening our relationship with gamers, particularly regarding the Crew Motorfest and Star Wars Outlaws. I think this is the thing, like the Crew scandal, which, if you're not familiar, basically there was this whole scandal where they unlisted the game. And so even if you bought it and spent money in it, that just disappeared, and it furthered was furthered by another comment that an executive within Ubisoft made, where they were like spitballing. They're like, oh, maybe people need to get comfortable with not the idea of not owning their games. And he was like thinking out loud, but as an executive, you cannot make that mistake. You cannot make that blind. It's like Yves Guillemot, when he made the quadruple A comment about Skull and Bones. I spoke to somebody that would know. I'll just say that. And they said that was not on the piece of paper Yves was supposed to be reading off. At all of these earnings calls, they have lawyers, they have the accountants, they have the finance team. Everybody looks over this sheet of paper that has everything written word for what the CEO is supposed to say. Because if he slips up and says something stupid, the stock price could fall by 50% in a day, right? So they have everything written on the piece of paper. And apparently Yves went off script for that little comment about the quadruple A nature of Skull and Bones. And everybody in the company was like, what are you doing? That's so stupid. Don't say that. But they, of course, couldn't say anything because he's at the top, and you can't badmouth the boss. So everybody just had to smile and nod. But like, they keep making these little blunders that just further the idea that they are horrifically out of touch and don't really care about their customers. And then, of course, with the Star Wars, with the crew stuff, that was a complicated one because it seems like it was all tied up with license deals they made like a decade ago. So they made these deals where they're like, hey, we can put a Lamborghini in the game, but then those deals expired. And I'm like, why would you make deals with Lamborghini that expire in 5 years for a live service game or in 10 years for a live service game? That doesn't make any sense. That should be in perpetuity. Like what? At the very least, you should be refunding everything that anybody ever spent in your game. What? It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. But that was a whole debacle. And then Star Wars Outlaws, of course, just launched too soon. It was buggy, missing some features. AI was super broken and had some problems, to say the very least. And I think it represented a huge financial miss. I think they really were counting on Star Wars Outlaws popping off and making a ton of money, and it just didn't. And it really surprised them. I think it really surprised them. I think they were very, very confident in that. And right now, like for AC Shadows, they're kind of braced for some blowback, but I think they just have not anticipated how much brand damage has been done to modern Ubisoft and how people just do not want to support it for one reason or another. Some people don't want to support it because they view them as like an unethical company that's, only renting your games to you. Other people view them as, a soulless corporation. Other people view them as, furthering an agenda, whatever. But the point is, there's a lot of people that don't want to support Ubisoft games for a variety of reasons. And in the gaming industry, you just can't give gamers ammunition like that. Like, otherwise you end up in this spot where your games aren't selling and you're like, well, crap. We spent $100 million, $200 million on this. We can't just have it flop, and there's just not much that you can do. Ace, thank you for that super chat. Let's be fair. This game was freaking terrible. I was the target audience. No military vibe or feeling like you are a cog in the machine. I played generic Korean free-to-play shooters 10 years ago, and they were way better COD alternatives. Oh, for I thought you were talking about Star Wars for a second. I was like, what? But okay. Or the crew. I was also like, what do you mean? Cog in the machine, military. Okay. But you're talking about XDefiant. Yeah, I think it had potential, but as I think he'll mention, there were a lot of problems within the XDefiant team. There was reporting that there was a really toxic company culture. A lot of executives and producers and game designers on the project had conflicting ideas, and nobody wanted to take accountability for any severe problems. A lot of the designers were focused on just trying to mimic features within Call of Duty instead of doing their own thing that maybe could stand out better. There were just a lot of problems with it. For sure. He goes on, thank you sincerely for your daily commitment to the quality of your work. The greatest strength of Ubisoft is its people. That strength is you. Thank you, Yves. Well, it's the people that have not been fired. Those are the people who are the strength of the company. The people that have been fired, oopsie poopsie. But for the people that still work there, yes, we care about you greatly. For now, maybe not later, but for now. He goes on, this is Tom Henderson now. Yves' email came following an internal announcement from Marie-Sophie de Robert that XDefiant and some of its studios would be closing. They're closing 143 people departing in San Francisco and 134 people likely to depart in Osaka and Ubisoft Sydney. So even more. I mean, we're approaching 300 people potentially impacted by all of this. They have the full announcement of that. It's, you know, this little thing. Developing games as a service experiences remains a pillar of our strategy, and we've achieved significant success like Rainbow Six, The Crew, and For Honor, among others. It's a highly competitive market, and we will apply the lessons learned with XDefiant to our future live titles. Basically just like, didn't work out. Oh well. But it's just another chapter in the story of Ubisoft trying to do something and it being executed poorly and clunkily, and then them shutting it down and walking away. And it's just, at this point, Ubisoft is a company held up by Assassin's Creed and Rainbow, it seems. And they have to find some way of expanding that, because I don't think it's that sustainable. Because what do you see now? Like, there's the potential for a not super great performing Assassin's Creed title in February, and Ubisoft is in full-blown panic mode, because if that doesn't perform well, that's their cash cow. If that doesn't perform well, they are actually in serious trouble, because Shadows is supposed to be the cash cow that funds them for the next like 2-3 years as we head towards Hexe, as they launch their multiplayer game, as they do all this other stuff. If Shadows doesn't make a lot of money, Ubisoft is in big trouble. So it's going to be interesting to see. I really don't know how like Shadows is going to do. It's hard to like distinguish between vocal minorities of gamers that were never going to play it anyways and actual fans that are frustrated by some of the stuff they've done. I think some of the recent gameplay they've shown of Shadows looks way better, but I think the scandals surrounding like the historical elements of Shadows and then Yasuke and all that stuff, I think that's going to be tough for them to get around. But do like old school or even modern AC fans who are playing Odyssey, who are playing, you know, Origins, do they care about all that? I don't know. I haven't seen any clear evidence that they do, to the point where they wouldn't buy the game. Like even now, I just saw this the other day, AC Odyssey has gone up to hitting, this is after it went on sale to be clear, but it's gone up, it's hitting 30,000 player peaks. Like 30,000 for a game that is 6 years old. And these are just the Steam versions. Yeah, I don't think this one went on sale, but 3,000 for a game that's 7 years old. Like if all these players move over and start buying Shadows, like I could see it making some decent money, but they don't need decent money. They need Shadows to make billions. Odyssey was good though. Yeah. But that's the thing, is Shadows is being made by the team that did Odyssey. Joel Raptor did point out some of the writing staff that did Odyssey have left since then, which could be nothing. It could also be like, uh-oh. But is that Montreal? I think it's Quebec. Yeah, Montreal is Origins, Black Flag, Valhalla. And then Odyssey is everybody. Odyssey is Quebec. Montreal helps on it. Bucharest, Singapore, Montpellier, Kiev, Shanghai, like they all work on it. But the point is, Quebec, I believe, is their big team. Like Quebec is the we're going for scope and scale. So I have more confidence in their ability to put out a solid game, because I agree Odyssey is a really good game. It's solid. The biggest problem a lot of people have with Odyssey is that there's too much of it. Like it gets too overwhelming, especially the last act really drags on. They really expect you to grind it out. So if you're enjoying the game, you're like, ooh, more to play. There's just a lot more to play before the final credits roll. But it's just massive. But it's a really high quality massive, like the fully cinematic camera. Every side quest has a story. Like there's just so much in that game. So I'm more confident in their ability to make Shadows good. But that's the thing, is like, I think players who love AC Odyssey will jump into Shadows and have a good time. I just don't know how many of the more casual players are being turned off by like the Shadows drama. You know, and I don't think Ubisoft is sure either. I do think they're worried because they delayed it and they know that this has to be a hit. But it's going to be interesting, because it either is going to blow up and be really successful despite all the drama, or it's going to just be kind of like a Star Wars Outlaws thing where it's just kind of like bloop into the water and then it just sinks. I really don't know. Valhalla was like 30 hours too long. I don't know, maybe 70 hours too long. Dude, that game is way too big. That game, like, I understand the idea of what they were trying to do. I get it, but I'm pulling up an interactive map just to show you. What they wanted to do was they wanted each one of these little areas to be like its own chapter within the main story. And so each one has its own, you know, kind of isolated bubble and experience for people. So I get it. Like, okay, this area will have its own storyline. This will have its own storyline. This will have its own storyline. This will have its own storyline. Some of them way better than others. Some of them really, really good, to be clear. But what it felt like was like nothing really connected together. The stuff you did up here didn't really connect with the stuff down here. And so it felt like you were just playing 12 different 5-6 hour games. And that's not even the end of it. Like, so these are all the objectives and stuff, you know, of things to collect. They also have like Vinland, Asgard, Jotunheim, the River Raids maps, Ireland, Francais, the Isle of Skye, Svartalfheim, and of course Norway. Like, the game is gigantic. And my problem between Odyssey and Valhalla is that I felt like Odyssey had a lot of really solid high quality content filling in the vast amount of space that was there. They had a large quantity of pretty high quality missions and stuff. Valhalla, I felt like a lot of the stuff that was filled in was stuff like, you know, if we zoom in, it's like a firefly, an ingot, a helm for you, a mastery challenge, a chest for you to open, a firefly.
One donated $3.
You know?
Hot take. I think Valhalla was a great game, with the caveat that you don't think of it as an AC game.
Mods ban him. No, I'm kidding. No, I feel the same way about Odyssey, to be fair. I think if you play it as just an open world adventure game, it can be really, really good. If you try to play it as like a stealth Assassin's Creed game, you're gonna be like, what the hell is this? But for Valhalla, I still insist, if you play like 25, 30 hours of it, and then you, like, right as you start to feel burnt out, you turn it off, you can have a good time with it. It's just frustrating that, like, if you really want to, I think for a lot of people, to be clear, for a lot of people, not everybody, but for a lot of people, it just starts to really drag on and it gets super repetitive. And if you enjoy the stuff you're repeatedly doing, it's fine. And you might even love it. But if you start to get burnt out on it, it's just going to be a massive trudge to get to the end. Some people eat it up. Like Joraptor, I think he said he has 4 digits, I think is what he said, in Valhalla. Like, he has over 1,000 hours, which is wild. But I think with all these games that are massive, it's just based on your enjoyment of it is based on whether you enjoy the repetitive content. If you enjoy going through raids and you enjoy bashing people with hammers and going through the motions like that, you'll love Valhalla because it's that for 100 hours or for 200 hours or whatever you want to do. Now there's so much free content. There's a ton. But if you're somebody that's looking for more narrative stuff, you're going to burn out real quick. Whereas Odyssey, I feel like, has so much narrative stuff tied to the side quests that you're doing that it's much harder to burn out if you're a narrative player. And I think that's why I like Odyssey more than I like Valhalla. And who knows, maybe in 5 years I'll go back to Valhalla and I'll play it again and I'll be like, I remember when games were like this. This is way better than what we've got now. Because sometimes distance makes the heart grow fonder, and the further away from a game's release, maybe the more you appreciate it for what it was instead of what you wanted it to be. But for this, I felt like Valhalla was just a departure, and it doubled down on some of the stuff about Origins and Odyssey that was good, but also a lot of the stuff that I thought it doubled down on that it just misunderstood, where it just went back to Ubisoft checklists of tons of garbage sprinkled everywhere. And if you're somebody that likes checklists, which should be clear, there are plenty of players who love the checklists, you probably ate this up. But for me, it was just too much and I burnt out on it. People forget AC Valhalla, that was all over the place. People were hyped for that game. People were super excited for it. It was like one of the first big AAA cross-platform games that hit all of these different platforms, new platforms. Yeah, Valhalla was a success. Yeah, no, Ark, without any doubt. AC Valhalla. It made a ton of money. It was their highest grossing game in terms of revenue of all time. It made over $1 billion. Like, this trailer is 9.4 million, and like, people were stoked on it, man. People were really excited for it. And I think they really expected people to react the same way with Shadows. And when they didn't, they're like, oh. I mean, I will say I spoke to somebody who was involved in a survey like three to 6 months before they actually announced Shadows. But Ubisoft was asking people, at least in those surveys, if they would be like, they didn't ask clearly, like, would you like a Black Samurai? They didn't ask it that directly. It was something more obscure, like, would you like to see the story of Yasuke, a Black Samurai, explored, or the historical story of that? So like, they were asking people about it, but well after it was too late to like change anything. So I think they knew some people would react poorly. I don't think they had any idea people were gonna react that poorly. He took my thing.